Graduation rates in the River City, up or down? We're digging into the data with Duval County School Board Chairman Darryl Willie joins us as we also look at how the board plans to restart the selection process for a new superintendent. It was a long and jam-packed City Council meeting this week, and Rory Diamond is back in the chamber.
My heart is so full today. I am so excited to be back. Sitting on the Jacksonville City Council, being back in America after 8 months deployment.
The man representing the beaches talks with us about an ethics bill in the Florida legislature, about council looking for its own legal counsel, and new legislation he's proposing called the HEROES Act on This Week in Jacksonville. Good morning. Thanks for joining us today. The search for the next Duval County Public Schools superintendent, it's about to start up again. School board initially hoped to have a new district leader by now, but a disappointing applicant pool last year has them starting over. So here's the new timeline. School board will advertise the position from March 15th to April 15th. Then choose semifinalists on April 23rd, that is, and then narrow it down to the finalists May 7th. They are planning to officially choose a new superintendent at a special board meeting that's scheduled for May 23rd. The goal is to have a new superintendent in place July 1st. A community survey showed that people want a superintendent with integrity and a background in education who can lead a diverse district. Additionally, the Florida School Boards Association, which is helping with the search, says the timing of the last search could have been the issue because the job would have started in January in the middle of a school year. So joining us right now, Chairman for the School Board, Darryl Willie. If you would, just talk to us a little bit about the search, how you're feeling after the board workshop this last week and getting restarted in this direction.
Yeah, we hit the unpause button, and now we're ready to go. And I think you said it best. Like, this is the best timing that we could have to bring somebody in. We know that folks are committed to their home or their area, their community. So now we're going to have a robust search, and it's an attractive job for someone. I mean, high graduation rates. We just got some teacher raises, got some new buildings coming up. So this is an attractive job, but there's challenges to it as well. So we're excited.
What are some of those challenges?
Just that, we want to continue to increase those graduation rates. We're at a record high since post-COVID, and we want to make sure that we continue to grow those areas, especially in the subgroups. We saw a movement in African American and Hispanic and low socioeconomic, but we want to make sure those continue to grow. As well as, we know, the master facilities plan. There's a lot of things happening with enrollment and buildings and costs. So this new superintendent will have to come in and navigate some of that process. So there's a number of challenges, but for the right person, it's a very attractive job.
We're going to drill down on some of what you just mentioned. I do want to talk, we didn't get to speak in detail last summer when the previous superintendent, Dr. Diana Green, resigned or retired. Your feeling, did the board nudge her out, or did someone else force her out, or no, it's really just she changed her mind about the length of that contract and said, I'm going to retire?
I mean, she was gone on record now to say that she's retired, but the political wins are the political wins. There was a lot of noise and action around her in that seat. And I'll say this, like, she did a tremendous job. And I was a big fan. I'm still a big fan of Dr. Green. And in fact, those graduation rates that we see today are due to her. So there's a lot of noise around it, but at this point, like, we know where we are, and because of her, we're better.
She has moved on to a new station and something she's passionate about.
Has,
but let's talk about those graduation rates. So initially, I reached out to the school board. I said, hey, I'm seeing that graduation rates have increased, as I understand it, up almost 30% since 2010.
Right.
That's got to be great news. How do you keep that momentum going?
Exactly. First, it's a testament to our amazing teachers and staff, principals, and especially the students. Because if you think about the students that have graduated with these graduation rates, they went through a period of time during COVID. So they had to go through that and then come back out of it. So I think to continue it, we do some of the same things we're doing, but also listen to the students, listen to the staff, listen to the teachers about what's working, and then move and listen to the data. So that's one thing we're going to make sure we do.
So let's talk about this. New data shows that test scores slowly are rebounding among American students who suffered educational loss during the pandemic. The report released this month by researchers at Harvard and at Stanford universities. The group's been tracking annual test data from 30 states, and the results, they said, show test scores in reading and math improved last spring for the first time since the pandemic, which we know started in 2020. Researchers also found students have made up a third of what they lost in math, a quarter of what they lost in reading since the COVID school shutdowns. That's the right trend. When we look at data like that and you say, what's the trend? That's the kind of trend you want to see, right?
Of course. Anytime you can see a trend like that, you have to lean on our staff to say, let's commend them and say you did a fantastic job. But now we have so much that we can sort of take in. There's so much technology, there's so many resources that we have that we're utilizing to make sure these students are getting not only to the test, but actually experiencing great growth.
I want to talk a little bit about something you touched on. In December, we reported that the taxpayer-funded plan to overhaul schools in the district, it jumped $191 billion in 2019 to a projected $3.91 billion. So we know the plan includes 28 new schools, but the number is eye-popping. I said, and at the time you said it's eye-opening.
Yeah.
So is there any sort of pivot from the district, or how do you adjust to those numbers being so much larger than anticipated?
Yeah, we want to be mindful of our responsibility to the taxpayer in these dollars, but we also want to be mindful of the commitment that we made to our community to say, hey, we're going to take care of communities that have been overlooked for a while. So right now what we're doing as individual board members, we're having meetings with the superintendent, facility staff to look at projects that are on the docket or on the slate. And then what we're going to do is come back as a full board. We're actually having a full retreat, and we're going to dive into enrollment, cost, boundaries, all those sorts of pieces, because at a certain point we have to calibrate, and that's the moment we're in right now.
Yeah, this seems like one of those challenges for a new superintendent.
For sure.
My question was going to be, how does the district make up the difference? Because 75% of the plan was going to be funded through that half-cent sales tax passed by voters back in 2020.
Right. We have some options. I think one of it is consolidations. That's always on the table. Everything is on the table at this point. But you also have an opportunity to go out for additional bonds. But I think at this point, we've taken a step back and we said, let's look at the landscape. Let's look at where we are, what costs are, enrollment is, and those sorts of pieces. And then we'll make that decision as a full board.
Before we go, got about a minute left here. Sorry to squeeze you on time.
No, you're good.
We know 3 students stole guns from a home near a school recently. There have been other threats of violence near Duval schools. How's the district trying to innovate in terms of safety? I've heard you say this is a priority. Safety is. Of course it is.
We take safety so seriously as this board. And anniversary of Marjory Stoneman Douglas, we just have to recognize how important safety is and how much safety and sort of those initiatives have changed. So we're doing everything we can, any and everything, from more locked doors, more barriers to get in, the Evolve systems, which are our gun detection systems in all of our high schools. We even have a gun detection dog. And in fact, we have the Sheriff Gaultier, who is the chair of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Committee. He's going to come actually next week to speak to not only us, but school boards and schools around this region to talk about innovations in safety. And we're going to be listening with open ears to be able to make any adjustments we need to make sure every single student is safe. And things like that, like you mentioned, don't happen.
Yeah. To think that it's been 6 years since what happened in Parkland. And obviously, there was some really fast legislation. Let's do some things. But at this point, maybe looking at what are ways to make it even better. Darryl Willie, I appreciate the time.
Anytime.
Great to talk to you today.
Anytime, every time. Thank you.
So it's been a while since we've hosted him here in studio. City Councilman Rory Diamond is with us, and that's next. Stay with us on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
And we say welcome back to our show. We also say welcome back to City Councilman Rory Diamond. Nice to see you again. You've been on our show before, and then there was this stretch where you weren't available. So some people will know, maybe some don't. You are part of our armed forces. You were deployed. Tell us where you've been.
Correct. So for the last 8 months, I've been all over the Middle East for Operation Spartan Shield. So we're trying to keep Iran's influence out, trying to keep the Chinese out, and do our best to protect our forces and our friends. And that's where I've been the whole time. I'm a JAG officer, an Army captain.
Yeah. So when did you decide to join? Obviously, you're not 18 right out of school. I'm signing up for the military.
What are you talking about, Kent?
You look like you could be. But yeah, what was this kind of pivot in your career and life at that point?
Yeah, well, I was the CEO of Canines for Warriors for 8 years. And so I worked every single day with, American heroes who had given all or willing to give all to protect our country. And I realized I hadn't done my part. And one day I just woke up and I said, I have to do this. I'm old enough to know better, but even so, I should jump in, and I did. They gave me an age waiver, and I was able to go do basic training, go do my schooling, and then, of course, called up to do an 8-month deployment and finished it, and I'm very glad to be back in America, back here in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So for the uninitiated, or those of us who are civilians and haven't done this, so you said, hey, I'm JAG officer, so I'll have you explain that.
Right.
And then, as I read it, you're U.S. Army, but also National Guard, or is that one and the same thing in this case?
Judge Advocate General, those are the lawyers in the Army. So I was the chief of military justice for like 14 countries in the Middle East. So all those court martials, people who had broken the law, I was doing the prosecution. So that's what that means. And yeah, I get to wear two hats if I didn't have enough hats.
Right.
So I'm a U.S. Army officer and a Florida National Guard officer. So if there's a big hurricane, I'll wear that Florida hat. If there's a foreign deployment like I just got back from, I wear the U.S. federal government hat.
Yeah. So one of the things, and we ran this in our open, but you're back at City Council, and I heard very early on in this last week's meeting, you took a moment, Council President Ron Salem recognized you. What was the message that you had? I thought it was compelling, but what did you share with your fellow council members?
Well, it was thank you. I mean, anytime someone's deployed, they have to lean on the people that they leave behind. And so in this case, it was our council president and our council. They were unbelievably supportive. Ron Salem in particular was just an incredible support to me. So I was just grateful. I just want to say thank you. And I gave them a flag for the council chambers to have forever. And that flag just happened to be, flown over our post in Jordan on the day that Israel was invaded by Hamas. And so
October 7th.
Yeah, exactly. It had a lot of meaning to it.
So I would imagine some of your experience applies to this HEROES Act. We're going to talk about that on our next segment.
Sure thing.
In the meantime, I want to hear about this. Jacksonville City Council, I understand, is going to be moving forward to finding its own legal counsel. This is what the council president said.
Right.
And that council member, Rory Diamond, will be making recommendations. Maybe explain this. As I understand consolidated government, the general counsel's office is the attorney for all the different components of the city. So maybe explain this.
Right, yeah. So in our charter, it creates the Office of General Counsel. Our charter also creates what's called Legislative Counsel, but no one's really taken advantage of it in the past. And so instead of going just to the Office of General Counsel, the council can hire its own lawyer, have its lawyer there and do its work, and essentially offset the work that the Office of General Counsel would do. And so we'll go and look, find the best firms or people to do this for us. And, now that we have a majority Republican city council and we've got a Democratic mayor, she's appointed our Office of General Counsel. I think it's a check and balance here so that, everybody has good representation and we get the best result for the city.
So I'm going to push back on this just
Sure.
for the educational opportunity. Wait a second. The mayor's office, mayor's a Democrat, but she appoints this person and then City Council has to approve. City Council approved of the General Counsel in this case. So isn't that the check and balance already?
Yeah, so that's one check you could do, but typically mayors get the people that they want, right? And the council is very deferential for that, and I wasn't here to vote for it. I probably would ask a couple of tougher questions, and if you'll recall, this was actually the second person that the mayor put up. But no, I think it makes sense to have a proper check now that we have some experience with this general counsel. Maybe there's, some obvious, tension between city council and our general counsel, so it makes sense for us to have our own lawyers.
Yeah, well, consolidated government, the consolidated city of Jacksonville and county, well, it's unusual. It's a different kind of government structure. As I understand it, the whole idea of general counsel came because prior to that, the notion was, hey, we can't have every individual part of government hiring their own attorney, that it would be cost prohibitive and it would be divisive and, all these sorts of things. So is there a way for council to have its own legal representation and coexist within that structure?
Yeah, there is. And, consolidation gave us a lot of efficiency, saved us a lot of money. And so it has a lot of good things, but it also creates tensions. And this is definitely the biggest one. And so the answer is the charter created the Office of General Counsel, also created the Office of Legal Counsel, Legislative Counsel, which is what we will do. And yeah, if there's a fight between the two, then that would be ugly. No one wants that. We're just looking for bandwidth so that the council can do its best job.
Yeah, so we are going to take a break, but we've got a lot more to talk about. And specifically, I want to hear from you about new legislation that the councilman has just introduced. What's in the HEROES Act? That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
Rory Diamond is with us. So Jacksonville City Councilman representing the beaches. We just talked a moment ago about a member of the United States Army and Florida National Guard. You filed some legislation. We just heard it, I think, Wednesday, announced in a news conference called the HEROES Act.
Right.
What is it? What does it do?
All right, so every once in a while, as an elected official, you get to do something you actually really, really care about. It's a passion about, has nothing to do with politics. Just want to do something that you want to be remembered for. And I'm telling you, I was serving in Saudi Arabia in the dirt in a tent with these 20 23 and 24-year-old kids, E4s, E5s, and I learned about their lives and that they, you know, in my brain, they're kids, but they've got, you know, spouses at home and young kids, and they could not make ends meet. And so I said, when I go home, I'm going to do something about this, at least set a standard for the city of Jacksonville, and that's what the HEROES Act does. It triples the amount of time we pay an employee of the city of Jacksonville.
Because currently that is just 1 month.
It's 30 days, yeah, and it's not enough. It's not. I would love to do an entire deployment, but 90 days. So you're JSO, you're JEA, you get called up, you're ordered to go on deployment. We're going to pay you your full salary for 90 days to try and ease the burden of that transition, and it's real. And then it does something that no other city in America is doing. I don't think any employers are doing this, but it gives 8 hours of flex time to a deployed spouse, right? So your spouse goes abroad to serve our country. We're going to give you 8 hours that you can break into 1 hour blocks to go take care of your family here in Jacksonville, which no one else is doing that. And it should be an incredible way to say, we get this pain. Yeah. We understand how hard it is.
What are those kinds of things that I could use that flex time for?
You take your kid to the doctor, take your sick parent to the hospital. You can go do your grocery shopping.
Because life keeps happening even while your spouse is deployed.
Right, and before they were splitting this evenly, right, 50-50, and now you've lost a second set of hands, another car, somebody who could watch things. So we want to make it a little bit easier for our team here at home who's taking care of their family while their loved one is abroad.
Yeah, if a critic out there says, well, the city councilman is just trying to make sure next time he's deployed, he'll get the benefit.
It does not apply to elected officials. I literally am filing an amendment that says this doesn't apply. It didn't apply to me anyways, but I want to make it really specific that no elected official will be affected by this.
Yeah, what was the feedback you got when you introduced it this week?
It's been awesome. So TK Waters, our sheriff, jumped on board immediately. JEA CEO Jay Stowe jumped on board. So that's the kind of management side. All the unions jumped on board, Fraternal Order of Police, the Association of Firefighters, and then of course our council president Ron Salem jumped on board. Many members of our council. Look, this is going to pass 19-0. It's going to be a great thing, and Jacksonville will set a standard for the rest of the country. And I'm going to send this bill when it passes to every single CEO in Jacksonville and every mayor across the city and say, look, here's a standard. You should meet this standard.
Yeah. So you mentioned Sheriff Waters. Sheriff Waters and other members of JSO were in City Council this week, and it was this idea that they wanted to show some support for the Sheriff's Office being part of settlement offers or discussions. Maybe explain this.
Yeah, I mean, look, every single police officer, every person who puts on that uniform and walks in any street in America has a big target on their back. Two reasons why. One, people are trying to dehumanize and attack our police, and two, some people are trying to make money off of attacking our police officers. And so of course you'd want TK Waters, who's elected by the entire city, to have a seat at the table to say whether or not we settle something. Because if we're a cheap, easy settlement, people are going to keep attacking our police officers. We want to shrink that target. We want to make it as unfun as possible to sue JSO.
Is it unfair to the legitimate victims who would have a right to make a claim or ask for a settlement because of wrongdoing?
Well, no, they would be able to have the same kind of negotiation. We just have the person who's in charge of keeping our city safe having a seat at the table, and that's our elected sheriff.
Yeah. Seat at the table is kind of something on the top of my mind. There's a bill in the Florida Senate right now about ethics and ethics commissions. This is something where Jacksonville's ethics commissions sent a letter that said, hey, we do not support this. What can you tell people about what's going on there?
Yeah, so I mean, I love ethics legislation. I've probably passed more than anybody in the history of the city, so it's close to my heart. And my friend Senator Burgess is the one who came up with this bill in Tallahassee, so it kills me to say this, but essentially this bill would take away the local ethics commission's ability to do investigations. And frankly, our ethics commission here in Duval County is doing a great job and has. I mean, during JEA, during lots of things that have come through, they've been the one between, corruption and our taxpayers and protecting us. And so I want to give them every tool we can to, keep things safe and healthy and corruption free. And so I don't love this bill. I love the author, but not necessarily what it would do.
There's a corruption trial that's just beginning. The federal courthouse in Jacksonville. Former executives for JEA, Ryan Wanamaker and Aaron Zahn. Jury selection has been underway this week. How do you feel about that? It's been 5 years, but this was a serious threat, it seemed like, to the stability of Jacksonville with this plan or plot, depending on how you look at it, to try and sell JEA.
Right. Well, I chaired the investigatory committee that, kind of like went through all this stuff. And so, of course, I'm, very passionate about seeing justice be done here. I'm actually shocked that we're going to trial on this. I would have thought that Aaron Zahn and Ryan Wanamaker would have pled by now. So we're going to have a trial.
And why do you say that? From your prosecutor's mindset, there's too much evidence for them to think that they're not going to be convicted?
There's a mountain of evidence that they committed this fraud on the city of Jacksonville for hundreds of millions of dollars. And so, yeah, I would have thought that they would have pled, but I guess they're going to go to trial. Maybe they won't. You know, at the last second, sometimes you come up with a deal, but looks like the jury is going to get to decide and tell the rest of Jacksonville what happened.
What is the benefit to the citizens of Jacksonville that this prosecution is happening?
Well, I mean, look, you've got to take things all the way to the end until there's justice being done. Not Kent justice, but the other kind.
Right.
And so what we have to have is a result where the people of Jacksonville say, this is what happened, and this is the result if you try and steal $1 billion from us. You know, there is justice. The law matters.
Yeah. Rory Diamond, it matters that someone like you is saying, hey, I'm going to serve my country and I'm going to go do this. I appreciate the time today. Welcome back. As you said in City Council on Tuesday, it's good to be back. I'm sure it is. Good to be back in Jacksonville and America, and great to have you back here on our show.
I appreciate it, Kent. This was my favorite place to be.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so This Week in Jacksonville, you know, it airs each Sunday morning at this time. Next week, Nancy Hogshead Maker about access and equality in athletics. She's a scholar, author, expert, and gold medal winning Olympian. I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching on air on Channel 4 and the CW17, and then online at news4jax.com and streaming on News4Jax Plus. And as we wrap up, a reminder to check out our podcast, This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. This week's episode looks at a brand new app developed in St. Augustine. It's a Black History tour in the palm of your hand. Really interesting stuff. You're going to find new episodes every Thursday at 9 a.m., and you'll find it right now on News4Jax Plus under the channel This Week in Jacksonville.
See why every day more people are choosing News4Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.